The rain poured down like endless tears from the sky, heavy and merciless. It was the kind of night that made the world feel crueler, colder, emptier. At the bus stop, a girl sat on the metal bench, hunched forward, her thin jacket no match for the icy wind that whipped through the deserted street. Her knees were pulled to her chest, her arms wrapped around herself as if she could squeeze warmth into her shivering body. Her hair, damp and tangled, clung stubbornly to her pale face. Droplets rolled down her cheeks, but no one could tell if they were raindrops or tears, so perhaps they were both. The streetlights flickered occasionally, giving the illusion that the world itself was gasping, about to shut down, leaving her in utter darkness. She had been sitting there for what felt like hours, watching buses come and go, none of them she dared to step on. Where would she go? She had nowhere. The thought cut through her like a shard of glass. Just earlier that evening, her life had splintered apart. Another fight at home, yet the final one. Her mother's bitter words still echoed in her ears. "You're nothing but a burden. If you can't respect this house, you don't belong in it." Her stepfather's silence, his indifference, had been worse. They didn't chase her when she stormed out, they didn't call after her. And as the front door slammed behind her, a crushing truth settled into her chest. Nobody was coming for her. Now she was here, sitting under the weak shelter of the bus stop, trembling not just from the cold but from the hollowness inside her. Her stomach clenched with hunger, but she ignored it. Hunger was nothing new. Loneliness, that was worse. Loneliness made her chest ache in a way that no physical pain ever had. She tilted her head back, staring at the swollen clouds. The thunder rolled in the distance like a warning. For a fleeting second, she thought about walking into the storm, letting it swallow her whole. She whispered to herself, her voice breaking into fragments, "Why am I even here? No one cares, not anymore." Her words were lost in the roar of rain, but she heard them, and that was enough to drag her deeper into despair. She was 17, and yet she felt 1,000 years old, worn out, tired of fighting battles that never ended. Cars passed occasionally, their headlights cutting through the wet darkness. She followed each pair of lights with her eyes, a tiny flicker of hope igniting. Oh, maybe someone would stop, maybe someone would notice her. But every time, the car sped past, splashing water from the road, leaving her even more invisible. The world was too big, too fast, and she was too small. Her fingers curled tighter around her knees. She thought of her classmate Tessa laughing, talking about futures, about dreams, about college applications. She thought of how easily they belonged to something, somewhere, and she thought of herself, lost, drifting like a leaf torn from its branch, waiting for the wind to decide where she would fall. The silence between the rain's rhythm grew louder in her head. She could almost hear her heartbeat, frantic, like a trapped bird against her ribs. She was scared, not just of the night, but of tomorrow. What would tomorrow even bring? Where would she sleep if not here? She had nothing, no bag, no money, no phone. She had left in anger, storming out with empty hands. A gust of wind blew harder, and she tucked her chin into her chest, shivering violently. Her lips turned numb, her fingers stiff. She squeezed her eyes shut, as if shutting them could make her vanish from the cruelty around her. And then footsteps, soft, light, completely out of place in the storm. She blinked, lifting her head slowly. At first, she thought she was imagining things, but through the curtain of rain, a small figure emerged. A child, a little boy, no more than 6, walked toward the bus stop, a bright red raincoat clinging to his tiny frame. The hood was slightly oversized, slipping over his forehead, and in one hand he clutched a stuffed rabbit, its ears drooping with water but still loved, still held tightly. The girl's eyes widened. What was a child doing here, in the middle of the night, alone? She straightened slightly, instinctively wiping her face with her sleeve, though it made no difference. Her voice caught in her throat, but before she could ask him anything, the boy stepped under the bus shelter and stopped right in front of her. His wide, curious eyes studied her, unafraid, unhurried, as if she were something important he had been looking for. The sound of rain filled the silence between them, and for a long moment, neither spoke. She thought he might run off, frightened by her ragged appearance, her trembling frame. She wouldn't blame him, but he didn't. He just stood there, clutching his rabbit, his small chest rising and falling with soft breaths. Finally, he stepped closer, his lips parted, and when he spoke, his voice was so quiet, so gentle. It cut deeper than any shout ever could. "Can you be my mommy?" The girl froze, her breath caught. Her heart stuttered. She blinked, sure she misheard him. "Mommy?" Her eyes searched his face. There was no mockery there, no misunderstanding. His gaze was clear, filled with an innocence so piercing it made her chest ache. The stuffed rabbit dangled slightly between them, as if he were offering it to her, as if that single act could bridge the gap between two broken souls. The words hung in the air, impossibly heavy, impossibly tender. For a heartbeat, the storm faded, the cold loosened its grip, and the entire world seemed to shrink down to just the two of them: the shivering girl who thought she had nothing left, and the little boy who had just asked her to be something she never believed she could be. And in that fragile silence, her life shifted in ways she couldn't yet understand. Her breath hitched in her chest, and the world seemed to tilt under her. The boy's words echoed in her ears again and again, like soft bells in the storm. "Can you be my mommy?" For a moment, she could only stare at him. She wanted to laugh at the absurdity, to cry at the cruelty, to shake him and ask, "Why me?" She was nothing, lost, broken, homeless. She had failed at being a daughter, failed at belonging anywhere. How could she ever be someone's mother? But the boy didn't look away. His small face was steady, his eyes so wide and clear that they pierced straight into her heart. He wasn't joking. He wasn't pretending. His voice trembled just slightly, not with fear, but with a quiet kind of hope, and that hope was what undid her. Her lips parted, her voice breaking, though barely audible over the rain. What did you say?" The boy shifted, hugging his stuffed rabbit closer to his chest. "Eyes to broken bar. Can you be my mommy?" His voice wavered, but the innocence in it remained. He shuffled his little boots on the wet pavement, then added softly, "You look really sad. My mommy's in heaven now. Daddy works all the time, and I get lonely. I thought a broken bar maybe you could smile if I asked." His words struck her harder than the cold wind. The girl's hands flew to her mouth, stifling the sob that threatened to break free. She wanted to scream at the sky, at fate, at the cruel twist that put this child in front of her. She was drowning in despair, certain she had nothing left to give anyone, and yet here was this boy, this tiny stranger, offering her the one thing she had longed for without even realizing it, a place in someone's heart. She shook her head slowly, her wet hair clinging to her face. "Yeah, broken bar. I don't know how," she whispered, her voice ragged. "I don't know how to be anyone's mommy." The boy tilted his head, his hood slipping a little, raindrops rolling down his rosy cheek. Then, in the way only children could speak, a simple, pure, without overthinking, he smiled. "You can learn. I can teach you." That smile broke something inside her, not in a painful way, but like a crack in a wall that had caged her for years. Light seeped through, tears spilled down her cheeks, and this time she didn't hide them. She reached out hesitantly, her fingers trembling, and touched his small hand. It was warm despite the storm, small but solid, grounding her in a way she hadn't felt in years. The boy didn't flinch. Instead, he squeezed her hand gently, as if to reassure her that it was okay to hold on. For a long moment, they sat in silence under the leaky bus shelter. The storm raged on around them. Cars rushed past without a glance, but in that little space, time slowed. She studied him more closely. His raincoat was slightly too big, probably handed down or chosen by a distracted father who didn't notice details. His stuffed rabbit was worn, one ear hanging loosely by a few threads, but it was clearly well loved. His eyes a broken bar. They were the kind of eyes that saw too much for their age, eyes that understood loss but still believed in miracles. Her chest tightened. She wanted to ask so many questions. So where was his father now? Why was he here alone? Was someone looking for him? But the words stuck in her throat, because deep down, she feared the answer. If someone claimed him, if someone pulled him away, this fragile thread of connection would break, and she would be left in the storm again. The boy spoke first, his voice softer now. "Sometimes I talk to mommy, even though she's in heaven. I tell her things, like what I ate, or when I win a game at school. But a broken bar, it's not the same." She doesn't answer. He looked down at his rabbit, stroking its worn fur. "I thought maybe broken bar if I ask someone here, They could answer. The girl's throat ached. She wanted to gather him into her arms, to shield him from the storm, from the ache of losing someone so important. But she was terrified. What if she failed him? What if she hurt him the way she herself had been hurt? Her voice trembled. I'm not good enough. A broken bar. I don't even have a home. The boy looked up at her, his eyes glistening, but his smile unwavering. Home is where someone hugs you. That's what Mommy said. You hugged me already, with your eyes. She gasped quietly, her chest shattering with a painful sweetness. This child, with nothing but a stuffed rabbit and a broken heart, was teaching her lessons she had never learned in her 17 years. He was right. A home wasn't four walls. A home was love. A home was someone choosing you. And in his innocent request, he had chosen her. The rumble of the bus engine grew in the distance, and soon headlights pierced through the rain. The girl glanced at it, then back at the boy. She had no plan, no answers, no idea where they would go. But for the first time in a long time, she didn't care, because she wasn't alone anymore. The bus slowed, brakes hissing, doors creaking open. The driver looked at them briefly, then impatiently back at the road. Passengers inside glanced curiously, some with pity, others with indifference. The girl hesitated. What was she doing? Was this madness? Walking onto a bus with a child she had just met? But then the boy's small fingers tightened around hers, and she knew. Sometimes life didn't wait for logic. Sometimes it handed you a choice disguised as a miracle, and you either grabbed it or lost it forever. She stood slowly, pulling the boy up with her. He clutched his rabbit tightly but never let go of her hand. Together, they climbed the bus steps. The warmth inside wrapped around them, a sharp contrast to the freezing rain outside. The girl felt the eyes of strangers on her, but she ignored them. She guided the boy to a seat near the window, and he plopped down with a sigh, resting his rabbit on his lap. As the bus rumbled forward, she stared out the rain-streaked window, her reflection faint beside his. He leaned his head against her arm, closing his eyes as if he had finally found a place safe enough to rest. And in that simple gesture, something extraordinary happened. The void inside here, dark, hollow, endless, it was no longer empty. It was filled, not with answers or certainty, but with something far greater. A reason to exist. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know if she could ever truly be his mommy, or if fate would cruelly tear them apart. But in that moment, with the storm fading behind them and the warmth of his hand in hers, she dared to believe in something she had long buried: hope. Maybe destiny hadn't abandoned her after all. Maybe destiny had been waiting, quietly weaving two broken souls together, until the moment was right. And as the bus carried them into the unknown, she whispered silently, not to the boy, but to herself, I will try. For him, I will try. Because sometimes, family wasn't given. Sometimes, family was found at a bus stop, on a stormy night, in the quiet plea of a child who needed love just as desperately as she did.